Vous êtes l'un des écrivains britanniques les plus renommés. Vos livres sont traduits en plusieurs dizaines de langues. Vous avez été primé à maintes reprises en remportant le John Rhys Prize et le Writers Guild of Great Britain Best Novel Award. Et notre pays n'a pas manqué de vous célébrer également, vous décernant le prix du meilleur roman étranger et le prix Médicis étranger.
The cars proceeded through the village, down a narrow cobbled street festooned with red, white and blue bunting. Standing in front of a massive Union Jack, an elderly gentleman, his chest hung with medals, clearly a veteran of the war, stood to attention and saluted. A brass band played. The villagers waved handkerchiefs from their windows as the cars passed by. "Jesus Christ," said Martin. Jack looked at him sharply. "What? It's a bit much, isn't it?"
Vos personnages incarnent les conflits, les incompréhensions, les doutes qui ont parcouru et parcourent le pays. S'entremêlent dans vos livres les questions sociales les plus profondes, les plus difficiles et concrètes, avec une intrusion fréquente de l'absurde et de la satire. Il est vrai que les frontières entre le réel et l'absurde tendent souvent à être très poreuses, et votre littérature joue entre ces liens, joue de ces interstices, et nous rappelle combien la vérité la plus profonde, si elle existe, se trouve souvent dans la fiction.
So to begin off with the first question, what inspired you to write about British politics through fiction? Was it to give food for thought? And in connection to that, do you consider humour as a tool that allows us, as the readers, to reflect on our own lives whilst accompanying the family developments within the book?
Thanks for that question. I consider this book and have described this book as one of my most personal, but also one of my most political. So there's a kind of tension at the heart of the book between those two things. And the personal side of it is that the family that you heard speaking in that extract are very closely based on my family. The mother, Mary Lamb, is exactly based on my own mother. And hearing your question, it just gave me a strange feeling, because if my family from the 1970s or the 1980s, when I was a teenager, could see me now being questioned about politics and being interviewed as a political novelist, they would collapse in laughter, because my whole being as a teenager, what everybody thought of me was that I was the one who had no interest in politics whatsoever. In a way, I would like to be writing about anything other than British politics, but just in the last few years, it seems to be so omnipresent, so hard to ignore, so in your face, that I find myself wanting to understand it in a way that probably isn't true of politics in slightly calmer times, like the 1990s, for instance. And I write in order to understand. It's for a very personal reason, really. You know, I create characters with different points of view, different beliefs, different outlooks to my own, in order to force myself, I guess, to sympathize with them and to empathize with them. So, you know, I never reach the answer in these novels to the questions that I ask myself, but, you know, just asking the question and exploring it is important to me. You asked me why I put humor in my novels. The question I always want to ask to a lot of my fellow novelists is, why don't you put humor in your novels? You know, do you never make jokes? Do you never laugh with your friends? You know, is laughter not an important part of your everyday life? It's part of the currency we exchange as human beings, and it's one of the things that brings us closer together. You know, again, I want to say to them, do you not realize what an incredible tool humor and laughter is for bringing your readers into a kind of closeness and a kind of intimacy with you as a writer? It's one of the great weapons in the writer's armory, I think, as well as being a fantastically important component of everyday life. So to me,
Moving on to the next question. In the previous question, you discussed a bit about identity and the British culture. Now let's look a bit more about specific identities within the UK. So in your book, you talked about English identities. You also mentioned a bit about Wales, Capel Celyn, Llyn. So the question is, what role do local identities such as Englishness, Welshness, Scottishness, and Northern Irishness play within the British identity, the general identity of the UK?
which part of Wales are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
De quelle région du Pays de Galles est-ce que vous venez?
Are you from North Wales or South?
I'm from Blaenau Ffestiniog, so North Wales.
Okay, right, okay, yeah, which is more or less the part of Wales that I'm writing about in my book. Yeah, in French the book is called Le royaume désuni, and obviously this is a play on the French name for the United Kingdom. And we get into a lot of difficulties in the UK talking about this. We use the phrase United Kingdom, we talk about England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Sometimes we subsume all of these things under the notion of a British identity, which is quite a problematic formulation, in my opinion.
How do you imagine the future between the UK and France, or between the UK and the European Union?
I'm terrible at making political predictions. So whatever I say, the opposite will happen. But I can talk about my hopes, which are not the same thing at all. So I'm not a politician. I don't move in diplomatic circles. I don't know what the logistics would involve to effect a proper, or start the beginnings of a rapprochement between the UK and the European Union. But what I would say is that still, even now, 6 years after the referendum, it would psychologically be very difficult for the British people to apply to rejoin the EU anytime soon, I think. One of the reasons I wanted to write about the World Cup final of 1966 is that it also occupies a very significant place in the English national psyche. And to me, we tell the same story about it that we tell about the Brexit referendum. What I mean by that is that I don't know how many people here are old enough to remember that match. I'm barely old enough to remember it myself, but it was a 4-2 victory for England over West Germany, and it was presented at the time as a crushing defeat of the Germans and a magnificent, overwhelming victory for the English. But in fact, the game was almost a draw, because one of the goals didn't really go over the line. If we were able to watch it again now with VAR technology and so on, it would probably be disallowed. And another of the goals was scored after the final whistle had been blown. So really, to me, that game was a draw. But the English don't see it that way. And in a weird way, the same thing happened with the Brexit referendum. I mean, 48-52, it's very, very close. Not a strong enough mandate, in my opinion, for the kind of dramatic, hard Brexits that Britain chose in the end. My hope is that one day Britain will rejoin the EU, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
My question was maybe on the link between music and your style, and how your inspiration, if you're looking for a musical sentence and while you're actually writing a novel.
To me, a well-structured book, an elegantly structured book, again, is an easier book to read. And my whole philosophy as a writer is to make my books easy to read, and I don't make any apology for that. To me, a book that is difficult has failed in some way.
On se sépare avec la musique de Jonathan Coe comme compositeur et interprète. Merci beaucoup.